Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Split Take Podcast. I'm your co host, Jacob.
And I'm your other co-host, Chandler, and welcome to the Alcoholic Anonymous Film Club.
Well, today I have water. I've day one of
Water.
just water. It's okay. I'll be back to beer tomorrow.
Yeah.
On today's podcast, we're going to be talking about the Assistant from 2020 and Sunset Boulevard from a year in
Before that,
the 50s.
2019, I think. Oh, yeah.
A few years before.
Few years. It's slightly antiquated.
But before we get to those, Chandler, what have you been watching?
I did not come prepared. Let me just go ahead.
Would you like actually? Here's a question I've been thinking about, because you sent a text message earlier today to our group chat, recommending the song from Inside Llewyn Davis as a good rainy day song. So it's currently raining out in Arizona. Winter in Arizona is mostly rain in the big cities. Tucson, Phoenix.
Very unpredictable.
What are good rainy day movies for you? Like, what are top 3 for you?
Well, I want to say Inside Llewyn Davis, but that's just an everyday movie that fits every mood. But my favorite rainy day movie is probably Chungking Express, even though it doesn't typically take place entirely through the rain. It just has a few very key rainy sequences that I quite enjoy.
Which is very interesting, because on my top 3 rainy day movies, I'm going to put In the Mood for Love, also.
That also, if anything, that movie is more prominently features the rain.
Yeah, they both do. Both have water as a big motif in their storytelling, whether that's rain or a flooded apartment.
This is one I hasn't seen in a while, but it's one I've been meaning to revisit. But I think it's, if anything, it's the most perfect rainy movie, and that is Rashomon.
That is definitely a movie that contains rain. I was listening to a lecture the other day, and the professor talking about Rashomon said it was claimed, and I might agree, that it was perhaps the best rainstorm on film.
Well, okay, I don't know if this counts as a storm.
And I'm not necessarily talking about like the scene.
Yeah.
Like, there could be better scenes, but in terms of like just the visceral aspect of seeing a rainstorm on screen.
Yeah. I also really enjoy, well, towards the end, The Lighthouse is pretty rainy.
It is, yeah. Yes.
I wouldn't call it a rain movie, though. Oh, God, I just had it, and now I lost it. Blade Runner. That's like cheating, because it never stops raining. And it's also not rain, it's acid.
Now I can't think of it. I know I had a second movie right on the tip of my tongue for a good rainy day movie, but now it's gone. Oh, well.
Inside Llewyn Davis isn't even rain. It's just very snowy and cold. That's why I suggested it. Not because it was raining, but because it was very cloudy and very cold.
Yes, and I think that's a good rainy day movie. Like, it doesn't need to be raining.
It's just, I don't know, it captures the feeling of rain, the gloom,
the gloominess of
the coldness.
Yes,
yeah,
that is more what I mean. Yeah, I'm sure there's more, but what have you been watching?
The Mirror, or is it just called Mirror?
I never know. I never know.
Well, I think it's the Criterion is announced. As far as what I've been watching, don't have too much to fill you in on. Rewatched both the Rushmore and The Man Who Wasn't There. Both movies from directors I really, really enjoy, and both those movies were a little bit better on a rewatch. I finally got around to the big one, which was Kwaidan.
Yes, Kwaidan. We've been talking. I think we've brought that up a few times on the podcast, saying that you were going to watch it. I remember I just edited one of the October episodes, and we were talking, because obviously October and horror.
Yeah.
So you had plans to watch it back then. Obviously, did not come to fruition.
It's daunting.
It is. It's a long movie.
It's a long movie, and I watched it in over 2 days. Friday night and Saturday morning is when I finished it. Because it's 3 hours, obviously. It's very slow. Very slow, I think.
It slow in a good way, maybe?
Yes, in a good way. Okay. In a good way. At points. Sometimes it was a little too slow for me. But it's essentially, they're like they're quick little bedtime fables stretched to like 40 minutes long. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's great, and sometimes I wasn't a big fan of it. But overall, I really enjoyed it. It's very, very theatrical.
Yes.
Like they almost feel like stage plays.
Yes, that's quite a bit of Japanese cinema, more so than any other like French or American cinema. 'Cause Japanese cinema is based around their theatrical traditions, so that
Yeah.
seeps into a lot of their movies more so. Kwaidan was actually one of the first Japanese movies I ever watched. I don't know
Really?
why. Yeah,
So it's
it's just
straightforward.
I don't know. I saw it recommended somewhere and I watched it, and I think I used to be in my favorite movies list, and it's not that I don't like it anymore. It's just I would agree that it's slow, but it's just so atmospheric and interesting, and
Yeah.
it kind of its own cultural piece of
Some really creepy stuff in it too.
yeah. Uh, the camera work especially is something I aspire to if I ever get to make like a horror film, and I think some of the that camera work can be seen almost in like stuff like Parasite or
Mhm.
other movies where especially I think it's in The Black Hair where it's just the camera's just slowly moving very mechanically through the dilapidated house and like panning,
Mhm.
and it's mechanical, but it's also kind of like the camera itself is like a ghost moving through
Yeah.
the movie sometimes. It's very I
Those
love that
first
work.
two were my favorite. The third one, the one about the
Hoichi the
I
Airless.
yes, I loved the opening part of that segment with the naval battle,
Mhm.
navy battle. That was awesome. But then once we actually get to the earless kid, it drags quite a bit, especially towards the end.
Yeah, I
But
think that
those
one in
first two,
particular is could have done with some tightening.
yeah. That last one feels almost anticlimactic compared to the other three. It's a lot more subtle and quick of a story. Um,
That's
but
always
those
been the one
first
that I
two,
remember the most. The
really,
last one that I think about a lot. It is I wouldn't say necessarily it's the best, but
it's pretty
it's
interesting.
so interesting. It's just kind of an abrupt it's the shortest and it comes
Yeah,
after the longest one. So it just kind of here you go. Here's another one. They
yeah.
just throw you like a little dessert at the end. And it's a very interesting story.
Yeah, my favorite one's probably the first one, though. The second one has my favorite moment. It's just the moment when the lady in the snow is just like running out, and he opens and he's staying in the doorway and he just watches her run into like this eye.
I almost feel like that run that she does is a precursor to the anime run.
Yeah, it's very. Oh, I thought it was weird. I don't know the custom behind this, but a lot of the women in this movie, like their kimonos, they're like T posing. Their hands were like drawn into their sleeves and they're walking around like this. I don't know what that means or what it's for, but it looked
Cultural.
especially goofy when she's running towards the eye. But the image itself was very creepy. Overall, it was good. The first half I enjoyed much more, but I was also much more tired when I watched the first half, and I was much more awake during the second half, which was the half I wasn't as into. It's a
Interesting.
good movie. I like it. Glad I finally watched it. I prefer Harakiri. That's pretty much it as far as what I've watched. We watched Big Night together in a
We did.
Discord.
Yes. You recommended it to our friend Nick, who's been on the podcast before, and we decided to virtually watch it together, which was a good decision. I enjoyed
It
that quite a
was.
bit. Big
It's a great
Night, great
movie.
movie. If you haven't seen it, can't recommend it enough.
Italians and cooking. What else do you need? Tony Shalhoub, who keeps showing up in movies I've been watching recently.
Wow.
I watched 3 movies in 1 week with Tony Shalhoub in it without planning.
That
He's
is
in,
impressive because he's not in that many
He's not in a lot.
movies. No.
I watched Big Night and The Man Who Wasn't There and Galaxy Quest. He's in all 3 of those.
Huh.
Yeah. Pretty good.
I'm just trying to pick out just the gems and what I've
The good ones.
been watching.
Well, hold on.
Yeah, because you know I watch
see
so
what
much.
gems you got.
It's also been a while since we talked. Oh, so immediately after our last podcast, which we talked about Grand Illusion with our friend East Coast Chandler, I decided I wanted to explore genre noir's filmography a bit more. So I watched Tony from 1935. What an absolutely beautiful black and white movie, and not in the way that I typically like my black and white movies, where the black and white visuals are very stylized and obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Like Harakiri is a good one. The Third Man. These are one where you can instantly like recognize or think of a frame from those films. I can't necessarily instantly think of a frame from Tony, except for the one that I posted on Instagram.
It's kind of like Frances Ha.
Yeah.
Because the only one I can think of in that movie is her in the elevator, which you also posted on Instagram.
I can also think in Frances Ha tangent of her running down the street, because that's on the poster of.
For me, that's not necessarily the shot so much as it is the music
and the mood.
Yeah,
great movie. Anyway, Tony, it was about halfway through that I started really getting in tune with it, because the story is kind of it's there. I don't know. I wasn't too into it, but about halfway through, I really started paying attention to how well directed and blocked the actors were with the camera.
Yeah.
And considering that it was 1935, I can't really think of that many movies that were doing that level of direction. I'd say it's like on par with a lot of the Citizen Kane blocking, not in terms of like visual metaphors, but in terms of using blocking to create interesting frames, I guess. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that properly, but it definitely feels like something that is ahead of its time, much in the way that Citizen Kane was.
Interesting. Does it precede M?
It is after M. M, I would say, great camera work in that, but I remember M more for the lighting, so the actual cinematography, and then the sound design, which obviously is very famous for being one of the best examples of sound design and one of the first examples of sound in film.
I always remember that shot that's in Grand Budapest Hotel.
Which one?
It's like in Grand Budapest Hotel when they're escaping and they look down at the guards playing poker or whatever. They're like shot.
Oh yes,
that's like it's similar to what's in M.
Yes. Now I see it.
Is that on the list? That has to be on the list at some point.
I think M is. M is on the list.
I've been meaning to rewatch that. What else you got?
I watched Searching for Bobby Fischer, which I watched because I watched The Queen's Gambit with my mom. She loved it, and I remember watching this movie a very long time ago with my dad, and I seem to remember it, liking it, I guess. But I gave it 3 stars on Letterboxd. Don't know why I did that, but it was clearly many years after the fact that I gave it that rating.
Yeah.
What a wonderful, charming 90s movie. Like I cannot recommend it enough. Simply,
it looks very 90s just from the screenshots that are on the Letterboxd page.
Yeah, it's definitely a more realistic depiction. I mean, it is based on real life, so I guess it would be. But the depiction of chess and learning chess and playing chess is much more realistic than Queen's Gambit, which is kind of like still very much based on actually playing chess, but a kind of a fantastical fantasy about that. But Searching for Bobby Fischer, very much grounded in reality, great fun performances. It is a great example of what a family movie can be and what family movies most certainly have not been in the past 10 plus years, with all the crap that's been coming out. It has heart. It's genuine. It doesn't feel like a corporate machine made it, which is nice. It's refreshing. It's not anything great. It's no masterpiece, but it is charming, wholesome.
So I'm looking, right, because I'm curious about this guy, the director. He's directed like 3 other movies, some of which are just not worth watching. But he also did I don't know how much he directed it, but his name's on the credits. A little miniseries called The Night Of, which is very, very good. Has Riz Ahmed and John Turturro. He's also a writer. I wasn't aware. He wrote Schindler's List.
Oh, would you look at that?
Yeah, and The Irishman.
Wasn't expecting that.
No. Yeah, he wrote The Irishman, Schindler's List, Moneyball. I guess he helped write Moneyball. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Yeah, look at him go.
Not bad.
Not bad.
Yeah.
There are worse credits you can have.
There certainly are. I watched Once Upon a Time in America, and I did not finish it. Still have about 45 minutes left, and I have.
Oh my God, you didn't finish it?
It's like 4 hours long. I know.
I know. That's why I thought you'd love it.
I thought I would love it too. It's obviously Sergio Leone. I've had the Blu-ray for at least 2 years now, sitting on my shelf. Never watched. Blind bought it. Didn't get around to it until now. It was okay. Glad I watched it, but
you know what's funny?
Yeah,
is that now I don't have as much an aversion to really, really long movies as I did before. But now when I watch like movies that are 3 pushing on 4 hours long, I'm afraid to watch them because now it's one of those things that I'll get to the end of it and I'll think to myself, damn, I could have just been watching A Brighter Summer Day this whole time.
It really is like the gold standard now of really
the gold standard for 4-hour movies.
Lawrence of Arabia isn't quite. It's 3.5.
It's 3.5.
That's about.
I consider 3.5 and 4 to be like essentially the same amount of time.
Once you're pushing past 3.25, you're getting into.
Yeah.
You have to really set aside time for that.
An Elephant Sitting Still. That's only 3, isn't it?
No, that's 4. That's 4 hours.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I also watched The River, another genre noir film. So I'll continue with that little discussion. Very good. Also, kind of wholesome. It has. I don't know what to make of it, because it kind of feels like a culturally strange cultural appropriation. I don't know
what culture.
Well, obviously, it's a European going to India to make a movie about Indian culture.
That's
and
fair.
It's very interesting in that respect that it is a film about Indian culture. Like it takes moments, like it stops the film and goes like, here's an Indian legend. Here is a custom. Let's look at this market of people and what they're doing. And in that respect, it's very interesting. It very much seems like genre noir was very much engaged with the culture and liked it and wanted to show it off in his own way. Not quite sure what to make of it in that regard yet. It certainly is a good looking movie. Martin Scorsese has called it one of the best color movies ever. I'm not sure I agree with that assessment, although it does look really good.
When did he say it though?
A while back.
Because was Speed Racer out at the time?
I don't think it was. I think you have a good point there. It clearly wouldn't be on his list today if he were to remake it. That being said, it has some really great dialogue in it and 2 really great monologues in it, which really kind of almost made me want to, like literally 2 lines of dialogue in the film almost made me want to give it 4.5 stars.
Wow.
Right. It was a bit kind of.
Was it French language?
No, English.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And
so a French person made a movie in India with English actors.
Yes, it follows an English family. It's just
okay. Gotcha. Makes sense.
Anyway, River, good movie. And lastly, I will point to a film I watched a couple 2020 movies. I pointed to actually because they're similar in an interesting way. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
Okay.
Which was 1 second. Directed by George C. Wolfe. And then the other night I watched One Night in Miami, directed by Regina King.
Regina King. Yeah.
And they're both very interesting movies to come out at the same time because they are about historical African-American figures. And they both are very contained. They're like continuous action over a short time period. One Night in Miami obviously is just One Night in Miami. Where, do you know the plot?
Yeah, I know it's a assortment of like 3 or 4 famous African-American figures. I just don't remember which ones.
Yeah, it's Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, Jim Brown, and Cassius Clay, otherwise known as Muhammad Ali.
Why did I think James Baldwin was in that? Guess not. Cassius Clay. I don't know that was his real name.
Great acting all around. Really, really fine production design to capture the mood. The thing is that Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is kind of, it fails where One Night in Miami succeeds with that premise of being kind of an
Okay.
enclosed time piece. And I will not say anything about the former film, but I will just say I highly recommend One Night in Miami. It was a very good film from 2020. And then a while back, I watched another 2020 movie called The Assistant.
Mm-hmm.
This is a segue.
The Assistant is technically a 2020 film. I guess it was first shown in 2019, but it didn't really start getting widespread release till 2020. It is directed by Kitty Green. It is a movie about a lowly assistant to some unnamed, unseen movie executive in a dumpy little office building in New York. It is Jean Dillman that is half as long and twice as entertaining. I'm just kidding. I've never seen Jean Dillman.
Speaking of release dates, I don't know. You know how like Google tailors its responses to where you are and who you are?
Yeah.
Why the hell is it still telling me initial release March 26th, 2020, Brazil? Doesn't Google know I'm here? Can't you just give me the US release date? Like, this seems like basic stuff here.
Maybe something in your search history that made it think you were
No, I've noticed
Brazilian.
this. I get different countries every once in a while. I'll look it up.
Interesting.
It tells me. Yeah.
Google the other day tried to tell me that David Lynch was 15 years old. Yes. I Googled I don't remember what I was Googling, but first I Googled John David Washington from the film Tenet, and Google said he was 5 years old. And I decided to Google David Lynch for some unrelated reason, and it told me David Lynch was 15 years old.
So the Assistant, it is it's a good movie. It's a good movie. I have some interesting reservations about it. But
interesting.
With that require me to go into some depth, so I won't do that quite yet. But I think ultimately I quite like it, and I like it maybe far more on maybe an intellectual perspective for its filmmaking than I do for actual emotional involvement and engagement from the film.
I really liked it. Like I was surprised at how much I liked it. Because the first like 20 minutes of this movie is literally just we follow her as she wakes up, gets in an Uber, goes all the way across New York City into the office 3 hours before anybody else, makes toast and coffee and cleans things. But I don't know why I found it so I feel like entertaining is not the right word, but there's no other way to describe it.
Hypnotic,
something like that. Yeah.
The triviality of those tasks, the mundanity.
I very much enjoy filmmaking that makes mundane little rituals like that look really good. That's why I've been trying more and more to get into Bresson, and I wish I liked Bresson more because Bresson is very good at that simplistic, straightforward filmmaking. But I don't know what it was. It's just maybe it's because from the get-go, I completely understood where she was in this office, like what she was doing, where she was at in the food chain here. So I don't know, maybe I was just on board immediately. But yeah, no, I really liked it.
No, I would say that I was on board immediately, and the first thing I wrote down in my notes was that the film just shows you stuff. There's no dialogue. No one's giving exposition. Yeah, the place of exposition is taken entirely by visuals and camera work.
Mm-hmm.
And it was marvelously engrossing. I would agree with you there. Yeah. And that's the thing that I appreciated about the film the most, is that it had the guts, or the patience, it made trust. A great decision, the trust in the audience, to just watch her go about her day. And that is that's the entire film. Like, it doesn't necessarily get any more exciting than that, other than there's more people around, so there's interaction. But even then, it's just watching.
You have to deduce.
Seeing. It doesn't give you anything easily.
For example, in the beginning, one of the first things she does when she gets to the office is she scrubs down the boss's couch. Which, your mind could jump to what that could possibly mean, but you don't know enough yet to surmise that. But then later in the movie, when she's in the office, stocking his desks full of pills or something, and you have all those people come in, and someone sits on the couch, and someone says, "Don't sit on that couch." And the scene late night in the office, where the boss is in there, locks the door or whatever. I don't know. It made me jump back and reaffirm what I already suspected, and there's a lot of that kind of thing going on.
Yes, and my general issue is that I didn't, after the initial getting involved in the film with the filmmaking itself, I found her actual plight and what she's going throughout the day not as engrossing on a filmmaking level. I understand, and I could, the film got no brownie points for being unpredictable. It's a very predictable movie. If you're at all familiar with the Me Too movement, you start the film about
predictable, but it is not preachy in any way.
No, which is good. I'm not necessarily saying that in a bad way. I should clarify. And it was more so that I didn't feel any tension when it came to the boss. And still don't know necessarily why. There wasn't much propelling me through the drama of her figuring this out. And part of it goes back to those details, because I do really like those things, but I don't think that there was enough of them in a way that I remember commenting on when we did our Death of Stalin review, that movie trains you to be on edge, to look oh, you said something wrong, now you might get shot. Here, I wasn't necessarily worried about her job at any point of the film, except for maybe the scene where she goes to the HR rep. Very interesting scene. But for the most part, I was never worried throughout the movie or engaged on any kind of tension level, because I think it's described as a thriller. I don't
No.
It is thriller-esque.
It's thriller adjacent, thriller inspired product.
So I maybe would have liked more details and seen the consequences of those details. And, I'm on the fence of early on in the movie, so it's not quite a spoiler. There's a phone call from the boss's wife, who the boss's wife is demanding to know where is he? And she doesn't really give her an answer, and then gets ringed out by the boss. And it seemed very arbitrary. And it just seemed kind of pulled out of nowhere, rather than a detail you could find that puts you on edge. There wasn't suspense there in that scene, and there was a lack of suspense throughout the film, I guess.
I get it, but I think I disagree somewhat, because I feel like the movie itself, it's something like that, something where her job is at risk, or she has to fix the wrong that she makes. I feel like that would give it a lot of plot, when I think the point of this movie isn't necessarily, it's not about one specific problem. It's literally just a day in her life. So the fact that none of this really escalates to anything, it just makes me, it emphasizes this idea that this is all standard.
Yes.
That nothing about this is new or different. She gets yelled at every once in a while. I think a huge part of why I don't feel that way is towards the end, when he sends her that supportive email, calling her smart or whatever. It's very conflicting at the end. But I just feel like it's one of those things that, you're going to get yelled at, and the point is not necessarily how it ripples through the rest of the story. It's how it makes you feel in that moment, because it's not fun being yelled at by anyone, but especially in this, where you can tell she has so much going into this job. So much of her life is in this job that I don't know. It's not necessarily about the moment, but the feeling that it makes afterwards.
Well, my responses to that is you can see she's dedicated, but I don't really get a feeling for why she is dedicated. Like the film takes it as an assumption that, oh, she wants to be there. Like I feel like I didn't get enough reason for her. Maybe this would be too dumb. Like again, half of me is wanting to give the film immense props for leaving a lot of this obscured. And I agree with you 100%. Like it makes the film better in a way that it is about the mundane, everyday kind of stuff that goes unnoticed and just keeps going on. Great. But at the same time, I at the end, I was just left kind of emotionally detached and again, more appreciating it for the filmmaking aspects. And part of that is just that her position at this job.
Yeah.
You know, as prospective filmmakers, we understand the dedication and the drive and the desire to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And how rigorous of a process that is. But I don't think that is a knowledge that is necessarily shared by everyone or is necessarily brought into the film just by anyone experiencing it. And it felt more like the film was just like, oh, here's a job. Like the fact that it was a entertainment job seemed very trivial. Like you could take that out and the film would not be any different. Really.
I see. I don't agree with that either because...
But it wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because there are a few mentions and moments, and obviously they're casting girls, but there are other jobs where you get, you hire people and there's other reasons to get people in and out of the office.
Yeah. Well, the reason I don't believe, no, I was going to say I don't believe you. I don't agree with you. Is because I never got the feeling that like this is her at her dream job. This is what she wants to do. This whole time, it just felt like something like she's not someone who was looking for a job and stumbled upon this. It's clear to me that this for her is a means to an end. This is something that she feels she has to suffer through in order to get the job she wants, which she says is a producer. Now, I feel that while, a lot of it is very much tied to the world of film, this idea that you have to suffer, being a lowly employee to get the job that you want, I feel that part is universal. And yeah, it doesn't necessarily need to be a film thing, but I also think a lot of the more predatory aspects of being a boss are a lot worse in this industry in particular. And
well, yes, I wasn't necessarily
really well with
that. I wasn't saying that it needed to be a film thing.
Yeah.
I just felt like it wasn't specific enough that I didn't feel that there was a passion or drive for her to be there and to stay there. Like at the end of the film, I'm thinking this is a job that is bad for your mental health, might advance your career.
Yeah.
Your boss is potentially a sexual predator, and it would have been more engrossing for me if I got a better sense of like her ambition and drive and like make it a real choice of like, why is she still here at the end of the day?
So stuff
not that it wasn't there. Like none of this is like stuff that isn't. It's just stuff that I would have liked more of and more.
So we're seeing the same thing. It didn't necessarily affect you to the degree that it affected me.
Right. It didn't fully connect. And this is just me trying to.
Well, I can't argue
explain
that.
Right. Yeah. Right. But I do at some point would just say a general criticism of the film is that for people outside of the film industry, people without the context of a lot of this stuff, and obviously the Me Too movement is very much in the public consciousness, so on some degree it is general knowledge. It is maybe too opaque, the film. in terms of like it doesn't give you much, and you do have to work for a lot of stuff, but maybe you have to work for too much, and it doesn't make itself accessible to a wider audience in a way that it maybe could have. But I don't know.
See, I don't know. I can't think of any instance where I thought that, like they're little things like gross reports and somebody was talking about coverage on a script, like that stuff, if you're familiar with that world. But I feel like a lot of other things you can pretty much surmise just from the predatory nature of the entertainment industry in general. I don't know. I can't necessarily point to any specific facet of the company that feels unrecognizable to people who aren't familiar.
No, yeah, I don't know. Everything I'm saying, I'm very conflicted about. Like, I'm not coming down. I'm not being negative about the film in any way. I'm just trying to articulate a very subtle things I wish a little bit more of. Perhaps it is the idea that the more specific something is, the more relatable it gets.
Yeah.
And this felt maybe too unspecific and too just a general day.
So too unspecific is the assistant, and then too specific. Way over here, you got Mank. So every movie you have to find out where it lies on the assistant to Mank spectrum.
The assistant Mank spectrum. This is true. I liked it though. Especially the cinematography was really great. And Julia Garner.
Yeah, she's great.
Great.
It's weird because a lot of I feel like digital cinematography to this extent always feels like painfully Fincher. Just because I feel like he was first to the whole digital arena. But no, what I'm saying is that this one particularly did not feel that way.
Oh, good.
Where I'm looking at him like, this feels like, to me, it should remind me a lot more of Fincher because it's a similar color, similar lighting, similarly static digital cinematography. But no, it felt all its own, and I'm not entirely sure why. But very, very well shot movie. Although perfectly paced.
Pretty well paced, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I wouldn't say perfectly, but pretty well.
Well, I loved we said that, God, that scene with the HR rep just hurt to watch.
Yeah, that was pain, but in a good way. Like,
yes, good way.
It felt very real.
Well, here's the thing. Here's my only issue with it. Because that scene, amazing, perfect. I feel like it perfectly encapsulates this sort of casuality. I don't know if that's a word. This casual nature to how all this stuff goes down. But then to me, I couldn't help but feel at times the boss was cartoonishly evil.
The boss we never see.
The boss we never see. In the emails, maybe I could, I'd get it. But the way that he's yelling, it sounds like Mike Stoklasa doing a voice.
Yes, I would agree with that. Again, I'm not quite sure how to articulate though. That
it's one of those things where the rest of the movie is so great at just showing this world for what it is. It's not dramatizing it in any way. It's just showing you how normal this is to everyone and just how plain the evil is. And then it's juxtaposed with this like screaming Lynchian villain.
A sinister, unseen man.
Yeah. And it'd be one thing if he was just shouting, but he's also doing like this weirdly gruff voice that sounds like he's putting on airs. I don't know.
Interesting.
He's best when you don't hear him, like through the emails, and when you see the coworker like get yelled at and he leaves the desk and goes back to his desk or whatever. That stuff is great.
It leaves it up to your imagination. Really does work. Yeah. As it always does.
But overall,
up to the audience.
Very much enjoyed it.
Yes, great movie. Recommend it.
I put it towards near the top of my 2020 list. I'll add it later, I guess.
I think it's probably in my top 10 of 2020. Yeah. We'll see how that goes as I watch more small acts.
As my only criticism is, as most movies, it's no Mank.
It is no Mank. That is true. However you would like to interpret that. Speaking of movies that are like Mank in some regard, Sunset Boulevard.
Like Mank. Mank-like. It's a genre.
Mank-like.
Mank adjacent. Sunset Boulevard. I guess you can introduce this one.
Not that this is a film that needs too much introduction.
Yeah.
This is our BFI Sight and Sound 100 top 100 movies of all time list, movie of the week. It is a 1950 American film noir written and directed by Billy Wilder. And it is starring William Holden, Gloria Swanson, Eric von Stroheim, a alumni of the podcast, both as an actor and as a director. And it tells the story of down on his luck screenwriter named Joe, who stumbles upon a old Hollywood mansion and a washed up silent film actress who asks him to write or to rewrite a script of hers.
Mm-hmm.
Chandler, we've both seen this before, I assume.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be one of our less engaging conversations because I feel like we're both on a pretty similar level of appreciation for this one.
Probably. Maybe we have some interesting new insights from this past viewing. I don't know. I do have a question though.
Yeah.
You have the Blu-ray.
I do.
Are there any special features on the Blu-ray? Because I looked on Amazon, it didn't tell me anything.
There are 2.5 hours of special features.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
As far as what they are, not entirely sure. That's just what it said on the back of the box.
Okay.
I looked at them when I watched it a week and a half ago. I don't remember what they were, but I remember wanting to look at them, wanting to watch them. But yes, it's worth buying because I'm pretty sure, that's where I got mine, was on Amazon.
So
it's cheap too.
It is, yeah. So I guess a double question here, since we both kind of have a general idea of what our opinions of the film are.
Yeah.
What do you think of Sunset Boulevard? And two, when did you watch it first? Like, what is your maybe your history of Billy Wilder? And I don't know. But
okay. Well, what do I think about it? It's one of my favorite movies, so I'll just get that out of the way right now. It, you know what? I still to this day I cannot decide whether or not it's my favorite Billy Wilder. It's always between this and The Apartment for me. Those two I think are just painfully perfect. But as far as when I saw it, it's one of those movies that I can't necessarily tell you. I don't remember when I first saw it. I know I saw it for a class. I want to say I must have watched it during my film history class. Because it's pretty reflective of the changing times. All I know is that I watched it at a time where I was pretty hesitant towards black and white and old movies in general. And despite that, it was a movie I watched like 4 or 5 times in one year, the first time I saw it. Yeah. Here's my quick question for you. Well, actually, no, we'll wait. We'll wait until we get into this.
Okay.
It's a different question.
I don't remember when the first time I watched Sunset Boulevard was. It's been a long time. I just saw it probably before college, and I think I saw it at least twice during college for film classes.
Yeah.
Maybe film history probably. And then that's just a guess. It sounds like a right guess. Must have happened. I don't know.
Well, to be fair, it's one of those movies that it's like Casablanca. You can teach so many different things about filmmaking with this movie.
Right, because you can talk about Billy Wilder as a director. You can talk about 50s post-war Hollywood cinema. You can talk about silent cinema and the transition that a lot of actors went through. You can talk about film noir as a genre. It touches on a lot of stuff. I mean,
you just talk about how stupidly perfect the screenplay is. Talk about any one of those things.
Yes.
Editing, great.
Yes.
Music, awesome, fantastic. If you were to teach a class on Erich von Stroheim, you could watch this movie.
If you were to tell me, like, you have to teach Hollywood cinema.
Yeah.
And you can only use one movie and it can't be Citizen Kane. I might choose or Mank, of course. That goes without saying. I think I would choose Sunset Boulevard. Like, it is a wonderful history lesson.
It is.
In a fictional
I'm trying to think
film. And
I'm sure want to come up with an answer better, but I don't think I can.
I don't think there is. Like, there might be better movies, but there are not necessarily better movies about Hollywood.
If you wanted to be an asshole, you could say The Player. Very cynical movie.
It's not as good.
No. Yeah, you're right. It's kind of the perfect Hollywood story.
I also took a Hitchcock. It was like a great directors class in college, and it was Hitchcock and Wilder. So half the semester was just on Hitchcock, the other half was just on Wilder. Obviously, for that we watched Sunset Boulevard. So that was the second time I watched it for class in college. Great, it's a great movie. It's one of those movies where every time I watch it, I think the exact same thing about it as I did the first time. It's great, no complaints. There's some stuff I want to talk about that I noticed this time that I haven't noticed before. But
okay. Well, my quick question was this, because right before I watched this, I was having a conversation with my girlfriend. We were talking about how we got on the subject of villains, just in general, movie villains, and I tried to list female villains because I felt the list comparative was very low. You know, you had your like Disney, like Ursula, Cruella stuff DeVille, like that. Yeah, Cruella DeVille, mainly Disney villains.
Yeah,
but then I after I watched it again, I thought, would you consider Norma Desmond a villain?
Yes.
Okay. Well, question's over.
At the beginning of the really great part about the structure of this film is the first half is how Norma Desmond is fulfilling Joe's goals or his needs in the film to both get money and to escape the creditors who are after him and to give him a place to stay and work to do. And then in the second half, she becomes the villain in that she is standing in his way of moving on with his life. So she is not necessarily the villain for the entire thing or
no,
a antagonist, someone who is opposed to the protagonist. But as she gets more and more unhinged as the plot goes on, she definitely takes on more of that role.
She's not an outright villain. And I feel like those villains are always the most interesting villains. The ones who don't necessarily start out as villains, not in the plot like twist villainy kind of way. Mank. Orson Welles. One of the greatest villains of this decade of film.
Orson Welles is the protagonist and antagonist of cinema.
Yeah, for some reason, you know, it's one thing that always happens to me with this movie every single time. And it literally happened the last time I watched it. Every single time I watch this movie, I always go into it thinking Joseph Cotton is the guy who plays Joe. I don't know why.
It's that era.
And then every single time the credits come up and I'm like, shit, it's William Holden. It's not Joseph Cotton.
Darn.
All I'm saying is Joseph Cotton would have been good.
Maybe we can hire someone to do like a deep fake and put Joseph Cotton's face over William Holden.
I will say the one thing that when I was watching it this time, the one thing that struck out to me, there is some really horrifying imagery in this movie. It's deceptively, it's not like full on horror, but there's some shots that genuinely kind of creep me out. Like the shot when he arrives at Norma Desmond's mansion and she's just staring at him with the sunglasses on way in the background.
Great intro shot. This is a great example of a film with a setting that has personality to it.
Oh yeah.
Like in the grand history of cinema all the way up to the Parasite house. This is one of like the early examples of a singular set in a film that is just you from the first moment, like it gets its own character introduction. The house, the film, like the
Psycho house.
Yeah. It more movies need to do that.
No, I agree.
Just saying.
It's so dilapidated and overrun by the elements. The pool, that part always creeps me out too. I don't know. It's just something about empty pools kind of creep me out.
There's this interesting thing about Hollywood where like people are constant. It is a glamorous business to be in.
Yeah.
And there's always like I'll from the beginning with silent film actors all the way till now, there's people on like the fringes of it who are being pushed out of the limelight and are fading into the background. And it's just, God, it's still going on today. You know, there's actors that can't work anymore. Sometimes they get destitute. Sometimes they have their big egos and they try to like make themselves relevant and reinvent themselves. Very interesting.
And sometimes they just say fuck it and they start their own YouTube channel where they talk about the weather and pull balls from jars.
Well, let's be honest. David Lynch could do nothing for the rest of his life and still remain relevant.
That's true. Another Mank connection.
Oh,
there's monkeys.
One of the things I really like, a very simple plot thing that I don't think I've ever put into words, is that I noticed this time around very specifically, is that the monkey is like clearly her only friend in the beginning of the film. And I don't know why I've realized this. I've just never put into words, in that she's lost her only friend and she replaces it with Joe.
See, that is one of those things that also occurred to me this time. Because every time I watch it, I'm like, why the fuck is there a monkey? Why does she have a monkey? And that time it became clear to me, but at the same time, I'm like, why a monkey? Why did they act together?
That's how desperate and insane she is. Maybe it's like a foreshadowing thing where like she seems kind of normal in the beginning.
Yeah.
And like, remember the monkey.
Now, here's another question I wanted to ask you. Because I feel like, so this is a thing that they teach you to not do in school.
Mm-hmm.
That is voiceover. What do you think it is about voiceover in general, specifically in this movie, I guess? When does it work? Because I feel like in film noir, it works pretty well. And, you know, you told me that you wanted to make a movie adaptation of the Wind Up Bird Chronicle. And now that I'm reading it, I'm just thinking there'd be a lot of voiceover. But I feel like in noir type stories, voiceover works well. But I don't know why.
Yes. I don't know how to necessarily put that into words. Interesting connection, which I talked about earlier. The River has a lot of voiceover, and I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it. I think it might be the most amount of voiceover I've ever heard in a single film.
Yeah.
It worked. I'm trying to like compare like what worked in those two. And I definitely think it is somehow like expressing emotion or creating tension in a way that is impossible. Like voiceover gives you it can be used as a crutch to fill in the plot and give you exposition, when it should more so give you a window into the character's mind.
Well, because I also feel like it has to serve a purpose. When I think of voiceover, this one I think works because he is, in my mind, this voiceover works because he is a writer. So naturally, what a writer would do is see things and try to translate them into something a little more literary and creative.
There needs to be like a physical purpose for the voiceover that, you know, it doesn't like literally someone doesn't need to be writing something down, but it helps that you can be a writer, and then it makes sense that there would be the writer doing a voiceover and telling this story.
Something I just watched The Man Who Wasn't There, Coen Brothers movie, and that whole thing is like a noir voiceover thing. Billy Bob Thornton plays a character who is very, very quiet. He hardly says two words to people around him, but he has so much voiceover. And I think it works because he's a very quiet person. He's very heady, and that would reflect in his character because he's constantly doing these voiceover. Granted, it's one of those things that towards the end it revealed that he's writing something down.
But I think that works just from hearing it from you. I think that works because there's a disconnect between what you're seeing from the character and what you're hearing, which makes it interesting and engaging.
Yeah. It's just one of those things that, you know, it's one of those rules that they say, you know, never break. But then you have movies like this that break it so well. I don't know. I know rules aren't necessarily supposed to be followed one to one, but it's interesting.
They're made to be broken. Yeah. They're made to be followed until you are good enough to break them. And if you have to ask, am I good enough to break them? You're not. Don't try it.
Yeah, but you know what you're saying about this whole like this constantly shifting nature of that whole town and the replacing. That scene always breaks my heart when she goes back to the studio. On the also the Lynch connection from Gordon Cole.
Get me Gordon Cole.
That whole sequence, oh man, it's hard to watch.
Really, like that's a brilliantly directed sequence in terms of like lighting and build up, and because obviously you're not, the first time you watch it, you're not sure why she's going, like you think you possibly are led to believe that she has a chance of coming back.
Yeah.
That, you know, the studio is interested in some capacity, and you know, the heartbreaking thing, the tragic thing of the scene, spoiler alert, this film is over like 80 years old now. No, 70 years old now.
Yeah.
So spoilers don't count at that point. They're just after her car. Another old thing. And that like it's the kind of the centerpiece of the film, the tragedy of that. And then that propels the rest of the film forward into
one of
hopelessness.
My favorite little details about that whole just beginning when she pulls up to the gate and the security guard's like 80 years old and he remembers her fondly, but it's one of those things where like, yeah, of course he would remember her. He's 80. He's there for the heyday. You know, it's just it's slowly building you into this, and now that shot, you don't even see her when the people are crowding her and some light guy shines a light on her.
I always think about that security guard and like what happened to him after this. Like Cecil B. DeMille was like, get me the guard who let her on the set.
Yeah.
You're going into early retirement or late retirement. He seemed pretty old.
He's pretty old. Maybe just part-time job.
This I think I've noticed this before, but Billy Wilder, kind of a funny guy, but in a way like what?
I don't even know what he looks like.
No, I mean like the films he makes. Not
okay, yeah.
But The Apartment specifically is a comedy, and Some Like It Hot. But even his dramas, they have a great sense of comedy and well timed. That doesn't like ruin the mood of the drama and all that. But there's some really fun lines of where like
the Gone with the Wind line. I thought was pretty funny.
Gone with the Wind. Another one where I talked to a couple of yes men from Metro. They said no.
I didn't even know that one. I didn't even pay attention to that one. Yeah, it's funny. If you look at like the Billy Wilder spectrum, I feel like if Some Like It Hot is over here and Sunset Boulevard's over here, The Apartment's right in the middle. I'm not nearly as big into Some Like It Hot as the other two, but these two are perfect. Eric von Stroheim also, this is the first time where I really was just like, damn, he is amazing in this.
And now now you've seen a movie he's directed.
Yeah, I'm converted. Maybe I'll like Greed a little bit more if I ever feel
as someone who
sadistic
knew who
enough
before. I watched Greed. No,
he's great.
But he's
a great actor.
This much is true. Some interesting connections between this and The Apartment. The producers in the beginning of Sunset Boulevard that Joe goes to pitch his dumb baseball movie to. The producer's name is Sheldrake, which is the same name as the big head Dr. boss in The Apartment. So maybe he likes that as for his.
That's Mandrake. Oh yeah, it's true.
There's also New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve features prominently in Sunset Boulevard and The Apartment. Suicide, both films. And
wait, did the suicide attempt happen on New Year's in The Apartment too? It did, didn't it?
Well, it was like a fake out because he popped a champagne bottle.
Oh
and she thought she was running up the stairs and thought, oh, that was a gunshot.
But that's right.
Bottle.
I thought it was the pill thing that happened on New Year's. Okay, no, you're right.
That was Christmas.
Hey, Billy Wilder's he's got his obsessions. Everyone's got that trademark. His is just suicide and New Year's Eve. Holiday suicides. What are you gonna do?
What are you?
Yeah. That scene where you find out that the New Year's party is just for them. That always makes me really uncomfortable. Oh God. Another little detail I noticed was early on in the movie where I don't remember what the conversation was about, but William Holden talks about how psychopaths sell stories or whatever. That's that's what happens in the end. That's how she becomes famous again, by being a fucking psychopath.
Great.
My only problem. Oh, maybe it's not even a problem. Maybe it's just because I read so many scripts, but I hate movies that start with the climax and work its way backwards. I give it a pass because it was the 50s. And it's a very striking image, him in the pool. But I typically hate it when movies do that.
Yes. But I think it might be a case of this is one of the first times.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's why I give it a pass.
Really done. Just work. Like it's such a strange. when you think about the narrative, it's such a strange thing because he's narrating it after he's
dead,
which is great. Like, I love that idea that like it's nothing, but it is kind of interesting in its own right. And Holden,
scary image too.
William Holden's performance really kind of great in this. Like, it's a very understated performance. It's cool and calm. Like, he's not a very bombastic actor, but I think him specifically playing off of Norma Desmond, who is all over the place, like visually is just showing everything on screen, and he's very reserved. And so it makes the performance that is kind of just not necessarily one note, but reserved, I said, into something interesting because you have that dichotomy with Norma Desmond and her performance.
And I like that he isn't an asshole towards the end. I think there's a part of him that genuinely does care for her.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, I noticed particularly on this time, I think it's very clear that a lot of his motivations and a lot of his divided loyalties is because he cares about her.
Like at the end when he breaks it off with the other woman whose name I always forget.
He breaks it off with her, but he also doesn't go back to Norma.
It felt like one of those things that he only broke it off with her because I guess he just wanted to be completely separated from everything. Maybe he thought
to make Norma feel better. So
it would make her feel slightly better. It's one thing to be left, but it's another thing to be left for another person.
So at least
I guess he just figured off they're both better off if he just disappears completely. Yeah,
didn't stop Norma from killing him. So I guess she didn't take it well either way.
Kind of cringe, Norma.
Yeah,
not very based.
Not
Norma.
Cool.
All I'm saying is Mank would have let him live.
Mank, tough but fair. Anyway, does Sunset Boulevard deserve to be on the a top 100 films of all time list? Okay.
Now, an interesting question would be if we're subscribing to my cringe opinion, where we can only have one, I would prefer The Apartment over Sunset Boulevard. But I do feel that Sunset Boulevard is more deserving simply because I feel like it's just as good of a movie, but a lot more historical. It has a more interesting context.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I agree. That is. I mean, I think I will always love The Apartment, and it will always be my favorite Billy Wilder film.
Yeah.
But Sunset Boulevard does have such a depth of interesting Hollywood
it's a
related meta stuff. That's it. I mean, why not both? If you don't subscribe to the one film per director rule,
if you're not cringe, then put them both on.
Put The Apartment on there. I think The Apartment is another one of the great films, but
also one of the only films to do anamorphic black and white, which I think is just about the most beautiful combination of lenses and color available.
It's great.